I'm Mina SayWhat. I'm here with Kwame Kilpatrick.
I'm here.
Now you have a story. I don't even know how to introduce you, right? So you tell us how you introduce yourself now.
Well, I'm just Kwame Kilpatrick.
Right.
That's all. I'm the dad of about 6 little people.
Love it.
I'm a husband, but also pastor now and
Okay.
CEO of Movemental Ministries in Detroit. But I'm also former mayor of the city of Detroit.
Yeah. So I've never heard of anyone doing a summit for the formerly incarcerated. This is the first of its kind. What did you think? What were your initial thoughts when you heard this was happening and Marvin was putting this together?
I was all in. Marvin didn't have to talk me into it. As soon as he said it, I was coming. My son is having a birthday party tonight. That was the only issue I had.
Right.
But this is so necessary. And when I got here, I can feel the spirit and energy and desire in the room, the desire for change, the desire for something to change in this criminal justice system, but most of all about the people who get trapped in it. And so this is something that's so necessary. I want to be a part of it now, whatever I can do. But at the same time, I think we need some actionable items to really just say, hey, let's create the largest, most powerful force that this world has ever seen in politics, government, and policy.
That's what I was most impressed by, how, unionization and organization starts with putting people in the room.
Yes.
So this is like the first step.
Yes.
What do you think are systemic, actionable things that need to be done in order to help people that are, trying to really rebuild their life after incarceration?
I think the first thing is a twofold thing. I think that even before you're released, you have to have a plan on the inside. I call being in prison being in the womb. The baby's in the womb. The baby gets all the nourishment, the oxygen, the food, everything that it needs in the womb is comfortable. But there comes a time where there's a great shaking, and it's time for the baby to go. Well, if the baby doesn't go after that shaking, the thing that gave it life, that keeps it alive, starts to kill him and destroy him. And we're seeing that in prisons now. When you're there too long and you're getting in too much trouble, you got to stay longer in your sentence, and you're actually coming out more deformed than you were when you went in. But when people are doing what they're supposed to do inside and they come out on this side ready to engage society. And so the first work begins inside. Then the second work, when you get out, don't run back into what you were doing before. And a lot of us go back to the same neighborhoods. We go back to the same people. We go back to the same stuff. And the Bible says don't give space to the enemy. Don't even go that way.
Yeah.
Change your circle. You've had this time, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years to change your circle, change it. So when you go out, you're ready to walk in what you learned in the womb. And then lastly, you got to work at the same tenacity and veracity that you work on your acumen, your understanding, your education. You got to work on your character. Quite honestly, most of us end up in that place not because of what we actually did, but who we actually were. And so in the character, you can't no more do the drugs, the alcohol. You can't be in a serial adulterer and fornicate. I mean, you got to have some holds and checks in your character and integrity that keeps you from being entrapped by this system. And so I believe those are the things that people need to understand. There's so many things hidden in books, but nobody read them when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And now when we have time to sit down in this womb, we can read books, we can understand. You don't need YouTube. Just get quiet, get by yourself, and you can learn so much. But also learn how your yes is your yes, your no is your no. How to not get involved in the spaces where the enemy traps you. And so those things working together, I think, are the greatest things that can happen now. But people have to be taught. Most of us come from families where we didn't have mom, dad,
Right.
and we didn't sit down for dinner. I didn't have that. You sit down for dinner, and how was your day? That's what we do now. That's what I do now at home. Man, what's going on? It's not anything my son coming at 14 years old and say, yeah, Dad, I was just stop it. I know exactly what's going on with you.
Yeah.
But my dad, he lived on the other side of town. He really didn't know, and he was a good dude, but that nuclear family, that issues where we all coming together, every parent knows that's what we have to become when we get out, because most of us haven't experienced it in our own lives.
How would you describe your interaction with the system and your journey?
My journey in the state system was grossly unfair, very selective and very malicious, but at the same time I got myself into it. I gave space for the enemy to get me. I did lie under oath about an affair. So it was obstruction of justice they charged me with. I got that time. So did 15 months in the state. While I was in the state, the feds indicted me. And so I had to go through all of that and trial and everything. That entire case was nonsense. It was a kangaroo court. It was horrible. But I don't think people understood it as well until Donald Trump got in trouble. Well, you got now this whole other part of the society. You have white suburbanites and rural people saying the system is unfair. You know, and I'm like, wow, because the same people was yelling, lock them up for me. Same people. When I was screaming it was unfair. But I think people in America now, for the first time, Republican and Democrats, white, black, Latino, people are all saying now something's wrong with this system. And we need to take opportunity. So my engagement was a 6-month trial, 63 witnesses, 141 people working in the trial. The whole federal building was on it. I got charged with a RICO. I was sentenced to 28 years, and it was so egregious that lawyers from California to New York, from Texas to Detroit, all saw the unfairness and approached the White House unbeknownst to me. So when I talked to Jared Kushner after I got out, white, black, Republican, Democrat, he said so many people come to us. And when we saw the case for ourselves, we saw that it was just a gross injustice and over-sentencing. And they gave me a commutation after 8 years. I never met Donald Trump, never shook his hand, never had a conversation with him. I walked out of a solitary confinement cell after 225 days locked up in solitary and walked straight into my mama's house.
Wow. How did you being in prison and going through that change how you look at other people who have been in the system?
David said in the Psalms that it's good that I've been afflicted, for I've learned thy statutes. And I used to read that, and my grandmother used to say when I was little, I was like, that's some nonsense. I don't need to get afflicted. But when I got in there, I learned about real people. I had 3 cellies that were lifers. And one of them is still there. The other 2, by the grace of God, I helped them get out. I started doing paperwork. I got 11 guys out of there by the grace of God. But I met people I never would have met but for this experience. But I never would have known their experience. One of my cellies, he didn't have a chance. He was either going to be dead or in there for life. And the grace was that he was in there for life, and now he's out, he's working for GM, he has a wife, he's doing stuff. But he did 22 years in prison without even having a chance. He jumped off the porch at 9 years old. He was running, bags and stuff. Yeah, so where do you go for that? He didn't have a dad. His mom was strung out. So, I'm sitting there with people, they talk the stuff to me, man. Remember, we ain't had no food. I was like, hell no. We had food all the time. I didn't have that experience. It wasn't a rich experience in money, but it was a rich experience in terms of my mama and my daddy. They cared about me, even though they were apart. Then my father showed up at the school. My mother showed up, and so I felt like I had to sit where they sat to be astonished enough to understand that some of these people just need help. Some of these people need to understand that there's more life than the one that they saw.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a system in place that recognizes this dude was 17 years old with some little rocks in his pocket and got 30 years and never had more than $5,000 in his pocket. Hearing these young stories, you walk up to one of these young Thundercats, they come in there crazy, and you say, man, we had that money rolling, man. And I asked him, how much money did you have in your pocket? What's the most you ever had when you went, oh, no, I had 5 or 6 bands one time. $5,000 or $6,000 is what you're telling me you had.
To
and
throw
he'd be like,
away your
yeah,
life.
but we had the 5, 6 bands, we brother. And you got 32 years, big fella. 32 years. And all you ever had was $6,000. It breaks my heart because, we spend that money. That ain't nothing. But that's as far as he can see. And the world and the media and the system try to tell you this little knucklehead is some kingpin. And they put him in a conspiracy. And 2K, one of all those unfair rules that, unfortunately, Joe Biden and that bill that he had put in place. And people just don't know, which is why I believe there's a new era coming with Donald Trump in office, not because he's Donald Trump, but because somebody rich and white got caught in this unfair system. And I believe since that is happening, and that person is saying, this is a horrible system, the most wicked people in the world are in the system, the FBI is the most corrupt organization in the world, I sit there like, oh my God, strong J,
So you really think Donald Trump is going to be an ally to formerly incarcerated or currently incarcerated people?
I think Donald Trump is not necessarily going to be an ally.
Right, because I don't see that happening.
Attacking that system works as an ally to people who caught and trapped in it too. And I believe when I look at who he put at the Justice Department, who he put in the FBI, the exposure of this system helps guys who never had a chance before. So even if Donald Trump is not saying, I'm gonna get that black guy, that Latino guy, and that white guy a chance, even if he's not saying that, he gives them a chance in exploiting and exposing the corruptness of the system. And that helps people file things on behalf of what's going on federally.
So as we discussed, this summit is the first of its kind. The summit is over. Now what? What are the next steps?
Now I'm gonna just start bugging Marvin Bain, and I'm gonna start asking him, how can I be more involved? How can we have more conversation of memorializing and institutionalize what we're doing? I think Beans is interested in that. I think Marvin is interested in that. They don't want to just keep having conversations. The conversation needs to come to something where it's finality and say, okay, this is what we need to do. And I just see men, women of all ages, 70 to 90 million people really saying in one voice, or getting in the mail, this is the issue that we need to be advocating on in Congress today. Or this is the issue that we need to be advocating for in the Pennsylvania legislature. So now you got 70 million people, 100 and something thousand Pennsylvanians saying in one voice that you need to vote for it. So all the fear of the Democrats who never put up one criminal justice bill the whole time they've been in charge, and all of the fear of the Republicans of I got to be tough on crime, it dissipates when their constituencies are saying, we need you right here. And as a person who was an elected official both on the state level and also in the mayor's office, I was in the state house for 6 years.
Right.
I was leader of the state house, and then I also was mayor for 7 years. And I understand the difference between you wanting to do something and the people showing up at your office saying, we need you to do this, Mr. Mayor. That's a whole different engagement. And I would like to have that and help people understand why that's important.
Mr. Kwame, thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Mina. I'll be listening to you.